you dive as deeply as you can into everything that you can, and whatever sticks, sticks. Like there's times in my life where I've done deep, crazy dives into things that were never seen. And maybe it filled or helped color less than 2 seconds of the film. And then there's some things that I didn't examine, or I didn't even think to examine until I was right dab in the smack of a moment and it washed over me. And then that became 70% of the character's journey.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to SAG-AFTRA Foundation's Conversations at Home program. My name is Michael Sládek. I'm a filmmaker as well as the New York consultant for SAGindie, which is an independent organization that helps bridge the gap between indie filmmakers and SAG-AFTRA. And now it's my pleasure to introduce actor Jena Malone of Adopting AUDREY. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me. That was so educational. I learned so much. I was like, I'm writing this down.
There you go. Now you know.
How can we do this? This is great.
Now you know where all that money goes to. It's good stuff, right?
Well, no, it's through donation. It's not through my dues. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's not part of the,
right. This is true.
Payment
right.
plan. It's all donation. That's cool.
Indeed. So are you on set somewhere now? Are you at home? Are you traveling? Where are you?
I'm at home. I'm this is dropped my kid off, put my work suit on, got to work,
This is it. This is work. All right, cool. Good. So let's start at the beginning. How did you come to this project, or how did this project come to you?
A very traditional route in the independent film sphere. You read a project and it doesn't have really any financing or any sort of home yet, but rather it's a writer or a director that's sort of trying to bring in their co-collaborators to kind of go out and find their space in the world. Mm-hmm. So I read it around 2015, I think, and said yes, and was like, let's do this. And then we didn't end up doing it until 2019. So at that point, Mike, the writer-director, Mike Cahill, had been kind of in process as a writer, and he kept changing it and rewriting it. And by the time we got to 2019, when we found our green light, it was almost a completely different script. It was really like he had gone deeper with the story and the characters and just kept subtracting and really allowing things to kind of live in a different way. And it was a real pleasure. That's not a traditional experience where usually the script stays pretty much the same until you get to your pre-production, and then it starts shifting a little bit with rehearsals and whatnot. But this was a real journey for him, so it was exciting to witness.
That's interesting. So did over those, I guess, 4 years of development, while you were attached, at least, was he coming back to you with new versions? Were you helping him, or were you just sort of like, you do your thing, tell me when to show up?
I mean, I wish that's also right around the time I started my journey as a parent. So 2016 is when that journey began for me. And so I was like deeply checked out. I thought I was never going to work again. I had sort of was like, I don't know. I didn't. And then I slowly started coming back into it and rechecking in with him and seeing. But yeah, I was pretty much zoned out that entire time.
Zoned out. Sound like you were zoned in to just something else.
Yeah, zoned in, but zoned out of those types of priorities.
Yeah, right. So, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, but I'm curious if you know what the origins of the story were. Like, where did this thing come from for Mike? An
article. He read about it based on a real story of this woman, Jena Malone, who have the same name, which is pretty amazing. Who had done this type of thing, and he contacted her and was able to, tell her story in a way that he wanted to. And it's sort of based on that story, but not her story. And yeah, that was the seed of it.
Interesting. I have to say, I really enjoyed how you played the role so straight and kind of relaxed and seriously relatable. I mean, I suppose there could have been a version of it that was much more kind of open wound, needy, constantly intense. And I'm curious how you came to that sort of take on AUDREY.
Yeah, well, it was important to me. I felt when I read the script, it was a character that I hadn't really seen that much on screen. There have been certain, little bits of starting to express this type of humanity and this feminine journey of, finally playing the sort of listless, rootless, self-reliant, jack of all trades. Traditionally, it's been a very masculine role, and one that I identified with, but didn't have a lot of female markers in it. And so there was that, which felt protective. But then there's also that, like, I know this woman. I've met this woman many times. Some of my family members are this woman. They're still doing 1,000 different types of jobs, and they'll live here for a bit and then move over here. And I think that it's definitely a cultural understanding of being this byproduct of the grind culture, and sort of the DIY or die type of thing, that self-reliance was really this all heralding, all encompassing, the only conversation that was really worth having. But then realizing that there's so many cracks in that, and that really there's other conversations that deserve to be held. And what I loved about Mike's exploration with this is that it felt like it was a woman that was wanting to have those conversations of, instead of pursuing this sort of like ride or die of self-reliance, can we pursue more conversations of community care? Can we get our needs met in different ways? So that was one aspect that was important. And then the third aspect was that she wasn't jaded, and that it wasn't, I mean, we're all coming from our own broken wound space, but it's our job to kind of be curious about it and find our own way to stay afloat in that. And I think that she's found a really interesting way to stay afloat in that sort of no man's land of, you can do anything, you could be anywhere, you can live out of your car, you can get an apartment for a bit, and none of it really has to break you. But yet it's all kind of part of your story.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's interesting that you say that, because I wanted to ask you about the genre, because obviously the drifter looking for a new start is such an old genre, but it really seems like this sort of feminine take on it, whatever, female, for lack of a better term, take on it. Wendy and Lucy or like Wild or Nomadland, there seem to be a few of these movies that are starting to break through. And I'm curious, do you think it's simply that the industry's caught up, that audiences are finally caught up? Is it a generational thing that these kinds of films are finally starting to be made and break through? I mean,
that's a conundrum of a question, because we're atmospheric creatures, right? So we can be influenced by 1,000 things. So is it society? Is that our own questioning? Is it a collective understanding? Is it just enough of saying this word, which then all of a sudden it becomes a word we all speak? I'm not quite sure, but there is a shift. There is a shift in the stories that we're telling. There's a shift in the audience and what the audience is wanting. There's a shift in what types of myths that need to be telling right now. What will help us? What will we be drawn to? It's different stories than in the 1970s or even the early 2000s. And I love that about filmmaking. I love that about storytelling, is that it doesn't matter. It's not enough to just make a good story, but it has to be born in a space that it can be seen and valued, So yeah, I think it works well for our current modern conundrum.
Yeah. And so I'm curious if there's not a lot of exposition, I'm sure on purpose, about Audrey's backstory. You get these little inclinations of what happened or why her relationship is like this. And I'm curious if you, as an actor, do you tend to fill in as many details in your backstory, or do you just kind of do you work with what you have and within the confines of each moment? How much are you digging into the details that we're not seeing on screen or not?
Yeah, I think that depends. You dive as deeply as you can into everything that you can, and whatever sticks. Like there's times in my life where I've done deep, crazy dives into things that were never seen, and maybe it filled or helped color less than 2 seconds of the film, And then there's some things that I didn't examine, or I didn't even think to examine, until I was right dab in the smack of a moment and it washed over me. And then that became 70% of the character's journey, So it doesn't really matter how much you put in or how much work, because it's all discovery. You can touch everything, you can get as deep as you want. With Audrey, I felt a little bit more protective of her journey because there's a lot of discovery in it, right? Because there's not a lot of dialogue, because I wanted to pursue a very naturalistic performance and not put anything on, like I didn't research adult adoption that much. I didn't research how to paint a mural because she doesn't know. She watches a YouTube video 45 minutes after she's hired for the job, So I tried to be protective of her journey. But then, of course, I did ask production, I was like, okay, find me a muralist. Let's dive in so that I can, I'm more of a, kinesthetic learner. Okay. I can't just watch a video and do it. I need to like be with someone and like put it in my body and watch their body. So, yeah.
Right. So you felt like you weren't completely faking it while making some mural that you've never made before.
Yeah, I definitely learned like how to measure it, how to do the thing. We spent like 1 or 2 days.
Did you go around building tree houses left and right to get ready for that? I was
given some good woodworking skills. Oddly, I have all of my brothers are like carpenters and builders. So I felt like I had grown up with some understanding of power tools and things like that. So
you're at home with that. All right. Okay. So I'm curious, the view of family life in this film. I mean, it could be seen as kind of cynical, I'm curious if you think it's a more cynical take or a more realistic take on where we are. I recently read, and there's a study that found that almost a quarter of Americans are estranged from close family members right now, which seems like a crazy amount of people. So I'm curious if you think this was, or if I'm missing something altogether, if it was cynical, if it was realistic, or if there's just another take on the idea of family life right now.
I don't know. I think cynical would be in the audience's eyes, right? So I can only have my own experience of witnessing it. But 100%, I think it's something that is culturally and collectively affecting everyone right now. And it's something I was touching on before of that sort of self-reliance versus communicative care. I think a branch of that conversation that we don't really have much is that we have trillion books and essays and theories and governmental to-do lists on how to parent a child from 0 to 18. But then we emerge as adults sort of struggling to have adult relationships with our families because there's just not that many collective norms or understandings. It's all very sweep it under the rug. You don't talk about it. You just deal with it. But really, like in my own journey, I have a better relationship with my parents now. I mean, I think it's also because I am a parent. I think that's part of the healing cue is that once you become a parent or start doing a lot more of this self-reparenting, you get to have a great relationship with your parents. So I definitely think that it's something that everyone is re-examining, not only because of the pandemic. I think it was the beginning of the questioning prior, but deeply even further now because of the social distancing and real smack in the face of like, honey, this is not about self-reliance. You have to ask for help.
Right.
And you have to have a community. You can't live alone. You must, your human animal demands it of you,
Interesting. It's very well put. Speaking of COVID, I want to ask you about that. So you shot the film prior to COVID, right?
Yeah, 2019.
So it's kind of a two-part question. How did the pandemic affect the movie itself?
Well, it lost its legs. It found no space. Independent films were shelved for felt like a trillion years, but it was only 2. It was just, it was a harder space for independent film to find its home.
So was it finished before the pandemic? Was it finished during the pandemic, or how did it?
During the pandemic, because we wrapped October, November.
So right before.
So Mike was still in his edit, really.
Wow. And how things changed for you as an actor throughout from like shooting this film through what you're working on these days?
I mean, everything shifted for everyone during that first year, but now things are sort of starting to come back. I mean, the only thing that's really shifted for me as an actor is that we just don't get wrap parties anymore. There's less intermingling. Everything else pretty much is the same. Oh, and then also I don't audition, I Zoom. It's like there's no more meeting people. You just don't meet humans anymore. It's very
awkward. How does that feel? I mean, is it I mean, you've been in the industry a very long time, since you were a kid, so it's different now, huh? How does it feel for you?
Well, I mean, if I was in my 20s, I would be really into it. I loved doing my own self audition tapes when I was younger because I had so much time, all day to just think and light it and write into it and change words and make it crazy and weird and make it feel like my own thing. And now as a parent, I'm like, I have 45 seconds, like where do I go? So I miss going into an audition space or meeting a director in person because I need that social impetus to inspire a little bit more, that like pulse, that spark. Yeah, it's just harder for me now, but that's fine. I mean, amen. Challenges is where you grow. So maybe there's some growth to be had.
Right. So, and speaking of growing, how in between projects, I mean, I know you have this kind of great relationship with your Instagram account, which I've actually followed for quite a while. Like you make this really beautiful artwork that you're putting up there, and a lot of music. So how do you keep yourself kind of motivated between stuff? Is that you really dive into your other projects, or is that just sort of catch as catch can, or how do you do that stuff?
Yeah, it's sort of catch as catch can. I mean, I wish I was linear. I wish I was like, and now I'm working on music and now I will work on film. You're like in the middle of a film project and all of a sudden this like photo idea comes to me, and it's like I'm in the middle of a music project and I read a script that pulls me out of it, or I don't know. I wish it was linear. I wish I could like have the government be like, and from these hours you will work on music, and from these hours you will work on poetry. Like I would love that, just like a loudspeaker in the distance that like makes me stay on top of my stuff. But no, it's deeply of the moment. It's deeply of the impetus. And if I'm not inspired, then there's nothing, So you also enter into deep spaces of no creation, which in itself is a conundrum,
Yeah. Cause I mean, for actors, it's such a conundrum for many actors who are just kind of waiting for their next gig or trying to get their next film made or whatever it may be. And are you reading, is stuff coming your way is it mostly, big genre, horror movies, sci-fi, horror movie? Like you don't see a lot of these small kind of dramas being made as much as you used to, certainly not comedies as well. But what are you seeing coming your way, just generally speaking?
Genres. Yeah, that's the thing that everyone wants to make. Or rather, that's where the easy money is to be had. But, it's atmospheric. It's going to change. There's always changes. The things that were coming to me when I was 10 years old, was repetitive and also could be classified. The things that are coming now are repetitive and can be classified as well, but it doesn't mean that it's the end of the story. I'm always interested to see where, what people are spending money on these days, in the sense of filmmaking and getting green lights. But you're absolutely right. I mean, this type of film, adopting Audrey, a small character driven, tiny, with a little bit of humor, a little bit of, sentimentality, like no one's making these films. And I don't know if we really ever will make films like this again. I don't know. It's not for me to know, that's what's so interesting is it's like the apparatus of filmmaking is always changing and it's based on 1,000 different factors,
So, and in terms of that, I don't know if you're allowed to say this, but can you give us an idea of what the budget range was for this? How many shoot days?
I don't even remember. It was like 21 days and then we did 4-day reshoot, 22 days. I don't know. Everything pre-pandemic, I don't remember anything at all. Like what happened, I have no idea. I just know that it was a shoestring budget. There was absolutely no money. But enough to make a movie.
And was the plan always to be up in upstate New York, or was that just sort of a necessity?
I think because it had such a long birthing period, there was other places that were talked about, but Connecticut ended up being the upstate New York, Woodstock area was the one that ended up being the best and most fruitful for the film and the finances and everything. So
Okay. Another sort of story question that I know you didn't write this, so I'm throwing stuff at you that I'm curious about, but we'll see if you have answers for. I was curious about why there was a decision to make Otto a German immigrant. Any sense of what that? Yeah, you don't know. Okay.
No.
I found it a very interesting decision that this woman, this obviously very white middle American woman was placed in this sort of kind of an immigrant family. It was an interesting choice. So how are you finding the industry is for you as in terms of how women are perceived, how control in terms of like, are you looking to direct? Are you looking to write? Or are you simply kind of standing in your lane as an actor? Or where are you with where things are in terms of your career and how much is being put into trying to raise up women filmmakers right now?
I mean, it's all just, the more roads, the merrier, right? I mean, you can only go down the same road for so long until you're interested in a side ramble. You don't have to turn side rambles into a freeway. You can ramble any which way, but I'm just glad that there's more spaces to explore in the feminine identity. That's a real benefit to not just, femme presenting humans, but all of us. There's a collective story to be had. And if we're only asking ourselves the same repetitive questions, we'll only be able to know the same repetitive things. So it's an exciting time to be alive, I've always wanted to direct. I have done a few tiny things with, music videos. But for me, my favorite collaborators, my favorite directors are ones that write and direct. So that's always been more important to me is writing. And so I've been on a writing journey for a while that I'm now prioritizing because it aligns more with my parent life. Because now I have these little tiny packets during the day of like free time, and I don't want to travel as much. The sort of trope of the traveling actor no longer fits my priorities. I still want to act, but it's just I have to say no more often than not, even if it's a great role or a great director, because I'm choosing different life priorities. So I'm just exploring writing. And then once I have more shift into time, I will want to pursue directing. But it's always been kind of like a plan, even cool. When I was younger, I was like, I'm going to do it in my 40s. Like I want to like explore this until I can't explore it anymore. And then I want to write until I can't write anymore. And then I want to like dive into that. So we'll see.
Yeah. Very cool. And the music, can you tell us a little bit more about what you're doing musically?
Nothing, unfortunately.
Nothing.
Yeah, haven't. I mean, I've been working on some like poetry stuff and some music just alone, but
for those who don't know, you've had a couple. I don't know if you call them bands, acts, whatever you mean.
They are bands. I had a band, Jena Malone and her Bloodstains, which then transformed into this kind of traveling improvisational band called The Shoe. But yeah, unfortunately, music hasn't transcended into my new parent priorities as easily as I would like, but it's sort of slowly starting to come in. So I'm just allowing it to be whatever it likes. And right now it's mostly just like my own weirdo when I have time, write, edit little songs, but I haven't, assembled like a collective perfect thing to release yet. So
right on. That's good. Well, it's fine. You're going to sounds like you're going with the flow, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Especially these days. Well, cool. Well, thank you so much for sitting with me for a little while. I really enjoyed speaking with you. It's a really
wonderful conversation.
Movie.
Thank you for watching the film.
And can you tell people where they can see the film at this point?
It's going to be out in several cities. I should have wrote it down, like LA, New York, Chicago, and a few places in your independent cinema. I think also AMC Theaters is going to show it, and it's going to be out on Amazon Prime. And then also like Apple, and it can be found in other places.
So it will be in theaters in some cities, and then you can see it. All right, right on. Well, great, good. Have you been able to see it in a big screen yet?
I have, yeah, because it did a really beautiful kind of tiny festival circuit that I got to be a part of. So
right on. Well, congratulations once again. And on behalf of the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, thanks again for sharing your experiences and the process of your craft with your fellow performers.
Thank you. Thanks for coming in and helping.
Bye-bye.